you create space, a
Yeah.
lot of space up here, and then you're able to utilize it properly.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think we're about ready to get started.
Yes, sir.
Howdy, y'all. I wanted to welcome you to Popular Liberty. This is our final installment of the of our Art of War series, and we're gonna dovetail it because chapter 10 and 11 are dealing with the types of terrain that you're going to encounter as a general, and I felt like there's a lot that has to do with the this archotropism that particularly the fourth law, which again, that's force power is equal to force divided by distance and time. And because one thing that comes out of that is that geography really matters. So that's something that I'm going to have a presentation at the end of the discussion today about analyzing what a potential war with China it might look like and why I don't think that's going to happen. So we're gonna, but first I want to tell you guys about Paloma Verde CBD. But I'm sure you've heard about these guys from everywhere else, and you have like 5 or 6 codes already that you are good at using, but you need to use mine instead because this is the important show. And let me tell you about this strawberry lemonade is by far my favorite. My father was getting remarried, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I had to go be the best man, and it's super weird for me to go and be the best man to my father's wedding, and I like the woman enough, but it's still really weird for me. And I went through probably like an entire tin of these in about a 4-day time span to cut the anxiety. And I gotta say, this stuff was a lifesaver. Like I wouldn't have been able to really make it through as successfully as I did without a large dose of CBD to get me through. And by the way, these gummies are like crack cocaine for me. And so anyway, but if you go there and you use the promo code POPULAR, you will get 25% off your any order over $75. And I usually buy 2 of these for myself and use that promo code. And that is it's perfect. And you also get free shipping with it. And don't worry about that, like a promo code King or a promo code Buck or any of those other crappy promo codes. Use mine, POPULAR, for 25% off your any order over $75. All right, let's get started.
Sure.
The Art of War, final installment. And so we've talked so far about the just strategy and tactics, but we haven't actually taken them into the real world yet. And one thing that I talk about with archotropism is that the fourth law is what brings all the entire framework into reality, because it involves distance and time and space and time. So if you understand, okay, you actually have to use this in the real world, and that changes everything, and it puts it all onto the physical plane. And we're going to talk about that here because Sun Tzu, he talks about different strategies you use for the different types of terrain you're likely to encounter. And let's start here at number 1. That Sun Tzu said, we may distinguish 6 kinds of terrain. 1 is accessible ground, 2 is entangling ground, 3 is temporizing ground, 4 is narrow passes, and 5 is precipitating heights. 6, positions at a great distance from the enemy. Ground which can be freely traversed by both sides is called accessible ground. With regard to ground of this nature, be before the enemy in occupying the raised and sunny spots, and carefully guard your lines of supply. Then you will be able to fight with the advantage. Ground which can be abandoned but is hard to reoccupy is called an entangling ground. From a position of this sort, if the enemy is unprepared, you may sally forth and defeat him. But if the enemy is prepared for your coming and you fail to defeat them, then return being impossible, disaster will ensue. And when the position such that neither side will gain advantage by making the first move, this is called temporizing ground. And I think, but what we can talk about with first. Oh yeah, let me skip to. Actually, okay.
I actually like that temporizing ground one. It says, in a position of this sort, even though the enemy should offer us an attractive bait, it will be advisable not to stir forth, but rather to retreat, thus enticing the enemy in his return. In his turn, then, when part of his army has come out, we may deliver our attack with advantage. That one's
Mhm.
awesome. I like that one a lot because we see that a lot. It almost seems like the left is throwing these things out to like make us all go on the attack on that side while they turn around and they do something else. They're very good with this, and we see it time and again with so many things.
I mean, this is kind of goes to what they usually do with that. The demand for racist is much higher than the actual supply.
Exactly.
Greatly outsees their supply. It's like that they want us to make the first move on giving them an excuse for aggression, and if you don't give them one, they're going to have to manufacture it. They have to come out, and it makes them look kind of bad, but they usually get away with it anyway. But because the right is not very good at coming calling them on it.
The right takes the bait. That's why they're kind of not come out unscathed, I guess.
Yeah, I mean this whole thing that victimhood is a pretense for aggression, and this whole thing where they're offering making these claims. Oh, I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. In order to try to get the right to really come after them and say that, oh no, you're not. No, you're not, or whatever. And this ends up giving them the the kind of the pretense they need to say, oh, I'm being bullied, and they try to get you canceled.
Right. Or I mean, example would be recently is Obama's birthday.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people were bitching and moaning about that to no avail? I mean, you're not gonna anything you say about Obama is just gonna fall on deaf ears. So why don't you just follow his lead? Have yourself a party with 600 people or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's like the establishment wants to. They always take the bait, and it's always something to. It's always distraction. They get you like here, come get this shiny thing over here instead of focusing on like the meat and potatoes of the issues people really care about. Like, hey, the Arizona elections, just found a whole lot of fraud, and maybe we should focus on that. You think? And they're like, nah, let's focus on Obama's birthday. And it's like they always, I almost wonder if it's by design that Conservative Inc. always takes the bait. I don't get it. I don't get it. How can you? No one can be possibly this incompetent. And
go
ahead.
Find themselves to be useful idiots, right?
I think that's the job description. They want to be useful idiots.
They don't recognize the entangling ground upon which they walk.
Yep. It seems like they're like the was it the Washington Generals versus the Harlem Globetrotters? Like their part of the play is to lose.
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, neocons are on the same side as the neoliberals. Like David said, these guys they are the Washington Generals. They're here to lose to the Harlem Globetrotters because that's the show.
Right.
And the Harlem Globetrotters just cheating every single which way and like pantsing the other guy, the other team, and they're just like, oh my god, and the ref is just like, I don't see anything.
Exactly. Well, I mean, everyone says it, right? Dave always says that the conservatives haven't conserved anything. Matt alludes to that a lot as well with the fact that they're just not doing any. They're just playing, like you said,
I mean, I think there's a more honest way to put it that doesn't like insult your potential allies. Is that
correct.
it's to say that hey, the Republican the conservative establishment, like they view their job description as trying to lose. And it's like, hey, conservatives, you really need to take out your own establishment. You got to stop. I don't know what it takes, but you got to recognize your establishment views their own job description as trying to lose. Like their job is to lose to the Democrats. They're just a foil for them.
Of course.
I mean,
well, either way, if they win, which they hardly do. They're comfortable. If they lose, they're also comfortable. You know,
Mm-hmm. Oh
um,
yeah, for sure.
got to light a fire in their asses.
Yeah. And with the he goes on to say, with regard to narrow passes, if you can occupy them first, let them be strongly garrisoned and await the advent of the enemy. Should the enemy forestall you in occupying a pass, do not go after him if the pass is fully garrisoned, but only if it is weakly garrisoned. And like right here, the narrow pass, which should be the two-party system. It's a narrow pass. You have two parties that got into it. This is a very heavily garrisoned, pass. Think about like the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae. Like that's it's a very very narrow coastal pass, and 300 Spartans could basically hold off Xerxes' armies of tens of thousands for days and days and days, because and at that point the numbers meant nothing, because Xerxes' excess numbers meant nothing because you could only focus them at like a few hundred at a time, and the Spartans could just take them down repeatedly. And this is that equivalent where you could have, but they still ended up losing because there's only 300 of them, but it's the same principle. And if you have like two big parties who have very very heavily garrisoned the narrow pass, it's like, and you want to be a really really weak small army and try to take that from them, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's like you're fucking crazy if you're in the LP and you're trying to run state and national level candidates. I mean, you're not even a good spoiler candidate, because it's just that heavily garrisoned.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. You're just not. It's not. You're not only fighting against the left at that point. You're also fighting against the right. And the reason for that is because they both see you. They both see the qualities of their enemy in you. So
of course, yeah, and it's like, and you end up sacrificing. It's like if you want to run state and national candidates, when you could be running local candidates who are not, where there is no garrison, and this is like basically almost unoccupied territory. Like, this is something that, I've seen as a campaigner and a block walker, is that, dude, it's really, really easy to win local elections, like stinking easy. And, libertarians say like, well, I want to have my presence felt, and like the sum total of your presence as a libertarian so far has been to be a name on a ballot with an L next to your name. That's the presence you've felt. It's like when you could be, having your presence actually felt as like a vote on the laws that get written and voted on in your local town. It's like
right.
You could have real influence if you just forget having Shane Hazel run as for a state senate or like the senator, the U.S. senator. He has no chance of winning. He's just going to associate our name with losing and failure. And, it's like you're not even like a very good spoiler, and everyone's going to hate you for it. And because you just seem like a sore loser. But I guarantee you, Shane Hazel would make an excellent city councilman anywhere. In any city council, he'd be better than everybody. And, you could have a real presence felt right there, rather than just having a name on a ballot, as associating the libertarian name with failure and losing.
Well, it's because they don't understand power, right? They for them, like, a win for them is having their name on the ballot.
Well, I mean, you could just call them saying they're autistic. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah.
It's like you could just say that they're just autistic. They don't get it, and their definition of winning, is basically everybody else's definition of failure and losing. And it's like I'm hoping the Mises caucus, because they've talked about we're not going to run state and national candidates anymore. They've talked about that. I don't know if they're going to like hold up to that. But they've said so far that they want to focus on local races that are winnable. And it's like, well, if you're going to focus on it, then you need to stop actually having, because your candidates that are willing to run, that's a limited supply. Mm-hmm. And you need to like put the order out that, all right, Libertarian National Party says no, but no state races, no national races. We're not doing the spoiler bullshit that doesn't work and just makes people hate us and associates our name with losing. And but you could actually have real power as a libertarian with an L next to your name at the local level, because dude, most people just don't even run. They just put their name and and everyone just votes for them. They have a name and a couple signs, and that's like the sum total of their local campaign for city council or town council somewhere. And it's so stinking easy to win. Like I knocked on close to 1,000 doors just last year, and I would always ask people like, have you heard? Have you seen the other candidates? Has anybody else knocked on your door? Nope. Not one. I never got one. I talked to close to 800 people. Not one had ever had like a local candidate. I was like the only one who had knocked on their door, and the other people who had knocked on their door were also from the same campaign I was campaigning for. And it just occurred to me how stinking easy it would be to get elected to like a city council or a mayor or something like that and have real influence. And see, hey Pop, I was at my local LP meeting yesterday. This is from Joshua. Working to convince them to join the GOP and push the county right. It's like they don't even need, for the local level, you don't even need to be a part of the GOP. Like you can win as just a libertarian in a libertarian party. And have real influence. Instead, having one libertarian voice at the city council makes everything better. Because it's like, again, most of these people, they just got there by signing up. Like that's it. And if you can do a little better than that, you can have the power.
Yeah.
And it's like, so why wouldn't you? Yeah. But you should be running like your Shane Hazels at like, okay, president is a little different. It's like that might be an exception. It still makes sense to run Dave Smith in 2024, but like you're like a Shane Hazel, put him on a city council somewhere, and it'd be really easy. He'd be a good voice there. Why are we running him as a senator that just makes the right hate us?
Well, not only that, but you're wasting valuable resources that are already scarce. You don't have like. How much money does it take to run a guy in a position like that versus a city council?
Seriously, and then you have to collect signatures for it for sure. That takes effort. Why not just put that same amount of effort to getting actual power? And you may not think local level means much, but actually means quite a lot.
Probably for most people means more than state or federal.
And if you it's like, and understand the two-party system, this is so heavily garrisoned. These two parties aren't going anywhere because, it's like the narrow pass is like, held by two very large armies. And, it's like, imagine if you'd had the whole Spartan army there at Thermopylae, and what would, Persia would be, they would have been defeated right then and there. And except it was 300 Spartans. And, they were still able to hold off, Xerxes' armies of tens of thousands. And now you want to take the narrow pass of the two-party system with a, just like 10, just like a few percent, and you just can't.
Right.
It's like you're not even like 300 Spartans. You're like 10. It's like this isn't going to work for you.
Yeah.
And the next one I'm looking at is number 16. Do you have anything before that?
No, I think we talked enough about that.
Yeah, when the common soldiers are too strong and their officers are too weak, the result is insubordination. When the officers are too strong and the common soldiers are too weak, the result is collapse. When the higher officers are angry and insubordinate, and on meeting the enemy give battle on their own account from a feeling of resentment before the commander-in-chief can tell them whether or not he is in a position to fight, the result is ruin. When the general is weak and without authority, when his orders are not clear and distinct, and when there are no fixes duties assigned to officers and men, the ranks are formed in a slovenly, haphazard manner, and the result is utter disorganization. I feel like this is exactly what the problem we've had on the right for a long, actually just as a country. It's like we live in an oligarchy. By nature, that is power that is spread out, and is unconsolidated power is chaos. And we have weak leaders, and the result is chaos. because you don't have anyone who's who has all the power and has all that decision making authority. You have basically it's all divided up, and therefore you have a bunch of weak generals leading the show.
Yeah.
And you see this on the right too. Is like, Trump was the first one to come along and consolidate power, and because of Trump was the first one. Yeah, because of that, before him, you just had one weakling after another, and no one wanted to follow. No one wants to follow a weak leader, and they just don't. It's uninspiring. And by the way, this is also a problem with the Libertarian Party, is that people don't want to follow someone who can't win. It's like no one cares what losers think. And people like other people who already have power. As again, it's why I say you should just make the libertarian presence felt at the local level, where you can actually win pretty easily.
Yeah.
And then people will follow you.
Yeah. Well, what you're allowing people to do is see actually what the libertarian thing is all about at the local level. Instead of hearing it, from like one of the bigger main party candidates, they can just shit on you so hard and like completely just destroy your message, regardless of whether or not it's true. People are going to understand what they want them to understand because they have the money and the power to do that. So if you take it at the local level, what you're able to do is, people actually see a libertarian in action, and they actually see a libertarian talking about the things that are important to libertarians. And
they'll see you fighting for them.
Right.
And it's like
at some point they're going to be like, oh shit, maybe.
Yeah, libertarians actually mean what they say. Right. And like, this is the Rand Paul strategy of success. Everyone else is just awful and bad and cowardly. And Rand Paul kind of just sits there and looks normal and kind of fights pretty decently effectively. And he's a hero for it. Or like Ron DeSantis. Like, he was kind of a normal Republican before COVID hit. And then COVID hit, everyone got way worse. And he just continued being normal. And it's and now he's a hero. And it's like, if you can be a libertarian in there and remain, be your normal, fighting courageous self, and everyone else, it just looks awful. It's like, you win by default. So get to the local level and, make your presence felt there, and people will notice, like, hey, this is the guy who's fighting for me. And the right here, 25, regard your soldiers as your children, and they will follow you into the deepest valleys, and look upon them as your own beloved sons, and they will stand by you even unto death. And it's like, again, people, they want safety, they want leaders, and if you can provide that for them, they'll love you and they will follow you for that. Running on this idea that we should have no leaders and no masters or whatever, it's like, that sounds great to like a teenager, but to normal adults, they kind of want some leadership and some order and some safety. And this is the sort of thing you ought to be offering to people, like the idea that that notion that people want safety more than liberty. These two are not mutually exclusive. And if you're the libertarian, you ought to be campaigning on keeping them safe, and then they should give you power for that. And then while you're there and you have the power, you can also use it for liberty too. But you get in by selling them the safety that they want. And by the way, they'll be safer with you than they will be with the other guys.
Exactly. Well, the thing is, like when you said about, it's a good. No leaders, no rulers is good for like kids or like teenagers or like young 20s even. When you when you actually have obligations, you don't want to really. Most people don't want to spend the time to have to do all this shit themselves, right?
No.
Why they want someone that can provide them safety, security, and all that stuff, because they are.
Yeah, like most people straight up tell you, like, we want someone regulating the economy. We want someone, providing police and military security and stuff like that. We want, public schools or whatever. And, we can disagree with all of that, sure. But, let's be honest, if the libertarians are the ones providing the military and the police and the education system, is it not going to be worlds and worlds better?
Right.
As I sure it should be private, but it's not, and we don't live in that world. And we do live in a world where libertarians can get elected pretty easily to local office, like capital L parenthesis libertarians can get elected to local office with a fair amount of ease.
Yeah.
And and then they can be the ones providing the police and the like the education and all that. And that it's like these you would do a lot of good, and people would really be grateful to you, and once they see you doing a good job, they'd be willing to give you more power. And maybe that would come as you'd have to have an R next to your name, but I mean, you're still the same person. You don't have to sell out, and because you're not selling out to the people. It's like it's like there's nothing about having an R next to your name that says you have to sell out to either leadership or your or your donors or whatever.
Right.
If the people are wanting to give you power, they'll do it.
I always said, like, if you're gonna run, just run as anything. Run at whatever party is popular in wherever you're at.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a fucking progressive to run as a progressive.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, because there's going to be people that pay attention, but by and large, most people don't pay attention. And they'll see, oh, this guy's progressive or this guy's whatever, and that's good enough for them. Because they already have an idea of what it is that you're going to be telling them, and that's good enough. A lot of, like, I live in Chicago, there's so many races that are like, it's one guy that's been in whatever his position is for 20, 30 years, unattested. You know? And it's just like, well, just fucking run, primary the guy. Or
most people they again, like I said, they win by signing up. It's like they don't campaign, they don't knock on doors. No one's going and knocking on doors in Chicago.
Well, in my neighborhood where it's a pretty politically active ward in the city, so like there's a lot of, like, every candidate comes, and I run a neighborhood group in the neighborhood that I'm from, and so all the politicians that are running always try to come to my house because they want to talk to me and make me tell everyone else that they're good, which I don't like any of them. But that's another story for another.
Do you have anything else in this chapter that you want to talk about before we move on to 11, before we get to the archotropism talk?
Yeah, I think we could just go right along to 11.
Yeah. Sun Tzu said, the art of war recognizes 9 varieties of ground. 1 is dispersive ground, 2 is facile ground, 3 is contentious ground, 4 is open ground, 5 is ground of intersecting highways, 6 is serious ground, 7 is difficult ground, 8 is hemmed in ground. Remember hemmed in. We're going to come back to that. And 9 is desperate ground. Ground, the possession of which imports great advantage to either side is contentious ground. This goes back to the 2-party system. This is where the contention is happening. If you don't occupy it, you're not really in the race, because it's like you're a third party in a 2-party system. It's like you've lost the contentious ground, and the other 2 sides have much higher greater advantage over you, and you can't take the contentious ground when someone already has it, and you're an idiot to try.
You're not even in the arena at that point.
Yeah, pretty much. Ground on which each side has liberty of movement is open ground. Ground which forms the key to 3 contiguous states. So he who occupies it first has the most of the empire at his command. This is ground at intersecting highways. Let's see. Mountain forest, rugged steeps, marshes, and fens. All of that, all country that is hard to traverse, this is difficult ground. But remember, difficult ground, we're going to come back to that too. Ground which is reached through narrow gorges, and from which we can only retire by tortuous paths, so that a small number of the enemy would suffice to crush a large body of our men, is hemmed in ground. This is something we're going to see in my archotropism talk. That difficult ground, hemmed in ground, these are going to be the subjects of the upcoming archotropism talk. When I talk about China and the 4th law, and ground on which we can only be saved from destruction by fighting without delay is desperate ground. This is when, by the way, this is where we are politically right now. It's desperate ground because we can we're up against our backs up against the ledge. If we back up anymore, we're going to fall over the cliff. And this is the time to fight. This is the desperate, where we are right now in 2021 is desperate ground. It's like the enemy has had a full frontal attack on us in 2020. They have pushed us, our backs up are up against the wall right now. If there's ever a time for war strategy for libertarians who are, of course, anti-war, it's now. It's like this is it. Where if we fail in 2021 and 2022, like we're fucked. It's like our children will not live to have the blessings of liberty the way we had for the first few decades of our lives. And this is desperate ground. Our situation is desperate. This is why we're having this talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't say it any better than you just did. You really have to understand, like, with being anti-war and all that stuff, like, yeah, that's all good and fine. But there's a time for everything, and now's the time for war.
Yeah, and speaking of that, now's the time of the attack. Rapidity is the essence of war. Take advantage of the enemy's unreadiness. Make your way by unexpected routes and attack unguarded spots. And if you just notice that, in the two-party system, how both of the parties are being, taken over right now by their wings, because the establishment is just so unready for the current situation. They're not handling it well. And that's why you have progressive, the really hardcore socialists on one side are just knocking out every single neoliberal they can find and replacing them with hardcore Marxists, who understand power and are able to keep it from them. And at the same time, you have the America Firsters who are taking out every neocon, and they're making the Liz Cheneys of the world, and Adam Kinzinger is going to be up next. These people are politicians of the Republican past. They have no place in the Republican present, and we should totally be joining in on this. This would be so easy to get a few of our guys in there, and we could easily work with these people. And this is because the enemy is just unready for us.
Right.
These are old people who don't want to fight.
Right, and again, I'm going to go back to the local races. What you just said in 19 was an attack unguarded spot.
Unguarded spots.
That's an unguarded spot. A local,
The cathedral is not present at the local level. There is no, maybe in New York City, but that's about it. New York City, LA, your really gigantic cities. That's somewhere you might find the cathedral operatives, but you're not going to find them on your small town level. As even in a mid-sized town, you're not going to find them. They're not there, and you could just take it. It's literally wide open. It's unguarded, and the incumbents at local levels, they're easy to beat. Their whole campaign is just a few yard signs. That's it.
Yeah,
it's
we've been seeing that. We've been seeing that everywhere. The incumbents are just getting picked off left and right.
It's there's a really, in Knoxville in Tennessee, Knoxville, that's not a small town. That's, 50, 60, 70,000 people there. And the mayor is a big Bitcoiner because he just walked in and got it. He just did. And, you could have one libertarian after another that just walks into power in a decent sized city like Knoxville in Tennessee. And people just, I don't get why you would run a Shane Hazel as a state senator when he could be, I don't know, mayor, mayor or city councilman anywhere, and he'd be great. It just doesn't make any sense. And I use Shane Hazel as an example because he's prominent from last year, not because I have, any feelings about him, personally or whatever. He's just the prominent example of what not to do. And let's see. Here's something. And the no, I don't want to do any of that. And I don't know. Is there anything?
I think 22 and 11 is pretty good. Carefully study the well-being of your men and do not overtax them. Concentrate your energy and hoard your strength. Keep your enemy continually on the move, or keep your army continually on the move, and devise unfathomable plans.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that is we should really consider.
I always think don't sit still when the enemy knows where you are.
Right.
So like if the enemy knows that, okay, you guys are are in the Libertarian Party where you're not a threat, it's like the best thing to do would be move.
Yeah.
It's like appear where they don't expect you.
Right.
And like again, appear
those three
at the
words. Oh, sorry.
yeah, like you could like they can pass a law and then you're going to be at the you'd be in there at the local level and say, no, we're not doing it. Imagine if you'd had libertarians on the city council at Waco. What would have happened? All those people would probably still be alive. You would have had libertarians who said, F you ATF, you're not, we're kicking you out. We're the police and you're not messing with our people. It's fine. It's nice that you have all those laws you pass, but we have guns. So we're saying no. You're not going to mess with these people. And that gives you credibility. You just saved lives. Now, granted, we would never have heard about Waco, but I consider that a good problem to have.
Exactly. But there's also those three really cool words in that I just read, and that's hoard your strength.
Hoard your strength.
What is that? That's a low time preference.
Yeah. You save it up. You don't use it on every single battle. You don't try to fight every single battle. You pick and choose them. It's like you don't say, okay, we're going to talk about Asia consent this week. We're going to talk about open borders the next week. And now we're going to relitigate nuking Japan 80 fucking years ago. Yeah. Like, this is not hoarding your strength.
In all three of those examples, as soon as I saw people going back and forth with it, I completely checked. I'm like, I don't even give a shit what anyone has to say here. This is just not worth my time. I don't.
I know. It's like you deserve to be ridiculed. Even if some idiot says a really dumb thing about, the nuking of Japan or whatever, just ignore it. Move on. You've got higher priorities. You can't fight every single battle. This is the problem with autism. It's just these guys just don't learn.
Yeah.
And like that's such a good point, to hoard your strength. Save it for what matters. There are battles that matter, and then there's battles that just don't matter at all. And the nuking of Japan is just one of those. It's a purity test, nothing more. And it's stupid to purity test people.
Mm-hmm.
It really is fucking retarded.
Yeah, you just categorize people that would otherwise be your compatriot.
What else do you see in here? So I don't have too much highlighted here. And
the skillful general conducts his army just as though he were leading a single man, willy-nilly by the hand. That's number 34. How to make best of the both strong and weak. That is a question involving the proper use of ground. You need to understand how to utilize what you have. It doesn't have to be you don't have to be the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
If you understand the strategy and the ground that you're on. Just like the 300, like you were talking about. They understood what they had to do, and they were able to hold out for as long as they could.
Mm-hmm. And but yeah, you can be there's ways to hold the ground where you are the one in charge. And by the way, having power makes gaining power a whole lot easier. So
money makes money.
Yeah, having money helps you make more money. And again, money is power, wealth is power. So the same principle always applies. And when you don't have power, you should start by getting some. It's like you should not start by trying to spread the message. Start by gaining power at the local level, and then work on spreading the message that way. Show people, don't tell them. It's like there's not enough time in the universe to convince everybody that libertarianism is true. Just show them that it works. And you have to have power to do that. Mm-hmm. You can't just point to the free market and say, oh, well, look, it works. It's like, we're not in the free market. That doesn't exist. And also, by the way, it got shut down last year. So, perhaps we should start by having some power to make sure we don't shut it down again, because that's what's coming again.
Yeah.
And that, let's see. Why, John? No, I don't want to do that. you know,
Oh,
yeah,
that's yeah. I don't know,
yeah.
dude. I think I'm kind
I think
of
that's I think that's about it.
yeah. I'm kind of ready for this fourth law here.
Yeah. All right.
I'm
I
loving
think this is
I'm
this
loving
is
this.
what's going to be fun. All right. So let's talk about China and the implications of the fourth law of archotropism. Again, that's the one that says logistics are a bitch and geography actually matters quite a lot. And this is there's been a lot of talk lately about like the U.S. going to war with China after China tries to invade Taiwan, because something that's been noticed by our spy satellites a lot is that China has moved a lot of its infantry away from its northern border with Mongolia down towards this eastern border on the sea, and because they're preparing for an invasion of Taiwan.
Mhm.
And they've been preparing for like 20 years. So but right now they have like 48 battleships that are preparing to they're mostly troop transports, because again you have to cross the South China Sea, and you can only do that at 2 months out of the year. That's April and October, because that's when the South or East China Sea is calm enough to make a crossing, or a planned crossing. And the any other time you can't have an invasion, because the waves are far too choppy, the storms are too unpredictable, and you don't want to lose your entire navy in a storm. It's
Right.
like that's like the worst possible thing that could happen. So October and April are your two times for when we should be on the lookout for a new war with China. And this goes to geography and climate, and it matters, because if you can't actually reach out and touch the enemy with your power, then you have no power over them.
Right.
And of course, Taiwan knows this, and they're going to be prepared, and so are we. So is the Americans and Japan. So the fourth law of archotropism, as I just mentioned earlier, is that the power is equal to force divided by distance and time. So in other words, you have to actually go the distance, and be able to touch the enemy with whatever force you have. And and you can't be in two places at once. So so you're also locked into time. Time and distance are costs to applying force. So something that Sun Tzu talked about a lot is your supply lines, and actually being able to the costs of moving an army from point A to point B. It actually costs a lot of money. You can't just say, "Oh, I have an army and I'm going to move it from over to go invade the enemy," because where you're going to get the food from, where you're going to get the water from,
Right.
where how much are you going to have to pay them to do all that marching. And what about when you get there? What are you going to do?
Right. Well, and that kind of goes to the back all the way to chapter 2 in the Art of War, where it says there is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare.
Bingo. And like, how long are you going to be there? 20 years?
Right.
It's not looking good. A campaign in Afghanistan is like, this is where empires go to die. And this because the costs all add up, and China knows this. So their invasion strategy, again, if they're limited to 1 month at a time out of the year, I mean, they better go quick, because no, not only do you have to move all of your troops from mainland China across the Strait of Taiwan, and have them as a landing force on the Taiwanese soil. You got to conquer the whole thing, because in less than a month. So I mean, this is going to be like a blitzkrieg. This is what they have to do.
Yeah.
They like, you can't because like after a month goes by, again, climate's going to be a bitch here, because
Right.
hey, the Strait of Taiwan, this is geographical. By the way, the Strait of Taiwan, this is open ground. This is accessible ground, because either side can go right across the ocean.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's oceans are weird, because they're barriers, but they're also completely crossable barriers that are like fairly flat. You can see the enemy coming,
Well,
and it's like,
you can see the enemy coming. That's
Like they're gonna know. And the moment China gears up for a real invasion, Taiwan's just gonna be harpooning, throwing every harpoon at anything that moves in the water, and because that's what they know to do. China has 48 battleships, one of which is an aircraft carrier that is like the smaller kind of aircraft carrier. There's like we have 10 such aircraft carriers the size of the one. Actually, well, there's 21 around the globe. 10 of them are owned by the United States that are the same size as the one that China has. And then there's also 10, I think 12, actually no, 12 more, because Great Britain just made one, and that are 7 times as large as the one China has, and 10 of them are American. And then the next one is like Great Britain. I forget who the last one is, but it's basically it's America and Great Britain are like basically all of the super carriers that have 7 times the firepower of the one regular jump carrier. And it's like that. This is not some like there's one American battle group of ships. We have 10 battle groups. Any one of them has the combined firepower on the open sea of all of the rest of the navies of the world combined. And so and we have 10 of those. So it's like the United States is not one that you can really go to war. We can project power literally anywhere across the globe. And Joshua just brought something up about China's one aircraft carriers, that it's it was built as a clone of a Russian model that was built in the 60s. Oh, that's the one aircraft carrier that they have. And by the way, our aircraft carriers are the same size. They come with 3,000 Marines on board, and China's does not, to say the very least. We call them amphibious launchers. So like we use them for amphibious assaults, and America's just way more force that can go all the distance. And see, that's the thing about China's 48 ships. They're not blue water capable. What that means is that they can't cross the ocean. They're stuck, going around the land because they're not big enough. And this is blue water navigation was something we developed in the a few hundred years ago, where we can actually cross the major oceans with ships that are capable of doing that. And China's ships, they can't do that. They have to stick to the coastlines, and they are big enough, but they're not really they're not built for the high seas.
Defense and offense, would you say?
Yeah, and so this is going to be a real pain for them, coming up. But so basically, for the fourth law, let's get back to this for a second. Because it's force over distance, therefore you're incentivized to have as much force concentrated. This is why you want to concentrate your forces. Because when you have a lot of force over a small amount of distance, this is what gives you more. Again, distance is a cost. Time is a cost. Mm-hmm. So you want to minimize that cost as much as possible to have as much force. This is why you'll have, cities where all of that concentrated power, because it's you have a ton of humans with making a ton of productivity that are concentrated in a very small area. Mm-hmm. And therefore your cities are going to have the strongest governments. No duh, because that's where all the power is. That's a high concentration of power. They're going to have a big government. Also, they're going to be a target for criminals. And because that's just the hierarchy. That they have that kind of the criminals there, they have that kind of power, and there's a lot of people there that don't, and therefore that's where they're going to that's where they're going to be going after people.
Right.
And this is also why we form political parties. Is you don't want a small political party, you want a big one, because you have a concentration over distance. You want to have your forces concentrated. You don't want to be a small party. Small parties are how you get beaten.
Yeah.
And the states are the same way.
Your party too. You give yourself the potential to exert less force. You don't need to use all your power all at once. You can kind of compartmentalize it and use it where it would be more important than to
well, yeah, I mean, it gives you that kind of network.
Right.
that you can have allies that can this is something I noticed with when I was campaigning, is that there are a lot of extremely safe districts where Democrats don't even run, and vice versa for Republicans.
Yeah.
And what they'll do is they'll fundraise in their own district and then use that money to buy ads in somebody else's district because they don't need it in theirs. That their forces or electorate is so concentrated through gerrymandering. This is why people gerrymander, is so that they only have to fight on a certain number of districts, and they can concentrate all of their forces into those contested districts. And it's a lot more efficient that way. It just is. And if, by the way, if all of the districts are gerrymandered for either Republicans or Democrats, and you're a libertarian, oof, boy, does that suck for you, because because all of them are gerrymandered against you. So, and by the way, and the few contested districts, none of them are gerrymandered in your favor either. So this is not playing well for you. You should go go to the local level, get what power you can, and and by the way, for this reason, all political power basically is necessarily institutional, because you have to have an institution of people to have those economies of scale, to have that hierarchy, to actually concentrate that power. Because you can't really have political power at the individual level unless you're like some uber rich bastard, and who can just buy everything. It's like, okay, if you're Bezos, I guess you're an institution unto yourself because you're Amazon, But yeah, even Bezos or Soros, like, these guys are institutions unto themselves.
Right. And that's how it is. Like the governor here in Illinois, Governor Pritzker. He was a billionaire. He was born a billionaire, and he he didn't have to do anything to really become governor, except throw out a bunch of money that
I mean, Lucky Sperm Club, good for him. So and you just buy your way into power because he's an institution unto himself.
Exactly.
And so if you want to be the small institution, you're automatically setting yourself up to be at a disadvantage.
Right.
Now, for and for this fourth fourth law reason, geography matters. If your country is all broken up by these, the sort of this difficult ground. Remember, difficult ground, as we talked about earlier, was ground that is difficult to cross. That's like marshes and mountains and oceans. And if your country is all broken up by that, it's really tough to maintain a national identity. It's real tough to maintain political identities. You're prone to warring factions, and this is something that is a real cost to liberty, because also what you're broken up is your economic system. If you're like Mexico, for instance, your geography is all broken up, and it's really tough to maintain a national identity like that. Or Afghanistan, God forbid. It's like you're like Afghanistan is so badly broken up that it's virtually impossible for them to have a national identity. The only time ironically, the only time Afghanistan really has a national identity to speak of is when they're being invaded.
Yeah.
So it really tells you something that these people are not going to be tamed. We shouldn't be there. And if you have like a security issue with your geography, where you're like Germany, which you have open borders on either side of you and nothing's protecting you, this is where you're going to get invaded a lot. And this is going to be real hard on your ability to maintain liberty if you're being invaded all the time. Like, remember the biblical Israel? They got because they had open terrain on basically both sides of where they lived. Because with Israel, you have kind of flatlands on the coast, then you have a mountain range, and then you have like a great deep chasm almost in the middle, and then you have mountain ranges, and then you have flat land again. And what they did is they kind of live on both of the flat plains, and then they don't in the Jordan River Valley. Basically, no one lives there because it's hot and terrible. No one wants to live there. It's a desolate wasteland, and so no one lives there. And
funny, like, have you ever seen like these videos on YouTube where like they'll show like the the borders of like all the different countries in like Europe?
Yeah,
throughout time. That's exactly this is exactly why, right? Because the border is constantly expanding and contracting because of,
Hmm.
the geography around them.
Yeah, and what you really want in geography is kind of like what America has, where it's really, really hard on the outside and really soft and gooey on the inside.
Yeah.
Because like America, you have two ocean moats on either side, so that's pretty nice. And you can get onto the land pretty easily, and but then you like within a few miles, you start hitting mountain ranges,
Right.
which are really, really high, and it's tough to get over. And if you have a narrow pass, this can be really, 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 really easily garrisoned by Americans with 300 million guns.
Hmm.
So it's like, and then in the middle, you have, just rivers and everywhere because, transporting, any economic goods throughout, on water is 92% cheaper than, driving them anywhere. So what you want a lot of flat, open rivers on the inside that are navigable. You can drive, they're not shallow. You can drive a boat over them pretty easily.
Yeah.
And the, and this also makes it really, really easy to have a homogenized culture.
Right.
Like in the, basically your cultural areas are coast, middle, and coast because the coasts are flat and the middle is flat. That's why we have easily three different cultures in America, in addition to Pacific Islanders who are their own thing and Alaska who are also their own thing. But three major cultures, and that's due to geography. And so, but it's also really bad if you're the Native Americans who are, the ones being homogenized, and
Right.
that kind of sucks. So that's that. They got homogenized, and that was a bad thing. But for us nowadays, it's a pretty good thing because now all of Middle America is basically a homogenous culture except for Chicago, and it's they're an anomaly.
Yeah.
So let's now talk about China. So let's apply what we learned about distance, and geography to China. China's geography. So right here you have basically this is this flat plain kind of right down through here. This is this is where virtually all the population lives. Like 70% of the population lives from Jianing all the way up to Tianjin and Beijing. Like this is like 70% of the population is like right here in the Yellow River Valley, and everywhere else is virtually uninhabited. There's like another 20 to 30% is basically right down here in the Guangzhou region in Wuhan, because yeah. Remember how we said you want to have long navigable rivers because this makes everything 92% cheaper? Well, when you have the Yangtze River that goes, this is the longest. I think this is the longest navigable river in the world. Like it's easily, I know it's bigger than the Mississippi, and so it exits right here at Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, this is why Shanghai is the center of trade, and ditto Wuhan right here. Unfortunately, that makes also communicable diseases much more common. This is that they're way more transmissible if they're right here versus like right here.
Yeah.
And I'm when I say right here for people who are just listening, I'm pointing to like the interior of China, which is all broken up and it's awful. You don't want to. There's like no economic progress that happens right here, and virtually all of the economic dynamo is like right here and right here. I'm pointing to the two coastal areas where you have the Yellow River up in the north, which is the lower half of it is navigable. The upper half of it, kind of right here, it's not navigable. It's all broken up by rapids and waterfalls and shit, and you can't drive a ship over a waterfall. Don't try it. You can, but don't do it. And it's not going to work out for you. Whereas the Yellow River down south is very, very, very navigable for virtually all of it, up until you get into the mountains here, because this is up, right here, this is the Tibetan Plateau. So that's Himalayas and mountains and shit. And that you can't drive a ship down a mountain. And that's not going to work. And the down here near Shanghai is like virtually all of their farmland, because this is that flat open area, which is the where they grow their food. But worse is it's not just it's also your borders on the sea, because remember that they are surrounded by 18 border. They have 18 borders disputes with all of their neighbors. Basically their southern borders are secured by like the Himalayas and rainforests right here that are virtually impassable. The reason you don't invade through rainforests is even though you can walk through them, there's all kinds of insects and funguses and bugs that will bite your soldiers and they'll die ghastly deaths of God knows what. So God knows what infection. And basically right here, this bottom half of China is a disease belt. That's what we call that in military terms. Is you never want to march your army through that, because this is where your whole army is going to get killed before they ever get to the battle by some god awful disease. And this is also where they're going to have bat soup, and of course a COVID lab. So but this is basically this lower half of China is all this is where since you don't have much of the population here and this terrain is all broken up, this is where you're going to get secessionists, basically, because it's tough for Beijing up in the north to project power all the way down over these foothills and rainforests, and that's tough for them. So what you have in the north is basically how there's two main camps in the CCP. One are the Shanghai industrialists. They're the ones who are like, okay, we're always open. China's open for business. We want to trade with the world and have some peace and prosperity and make money. And they're kind of in this middle or southern region with Shanghai, where they have the navigable rivers, where they can be much more open to trade. Whereas up in the north, because this is where the Han people mostly live, they're the more militarists, because they're the ones having to project power all throughout China. And so they're the ones who are all China unity, rah, rah, rah. And so you get militarists in the north, industrialists kind of in the center in the south, and secessionists down south. This is why Hong Kong is like right down here. This is why they're freaking out about the whole Hong Kong being a secessionist, is because basically it's tough to put a military all the way here, and they had to invest mountains of money into infrastructure that makes that easy. And same thing over here with Tibet, because all of their water resources come from Tibet. Basically, your Yellow River and your Yangtze, and Mekong up here too. All of these rivers, they start up here on the Tibetan plateau. This is why they had to invade Tibet, because otherwise their water resources are insecure. And but you get out here to the ocean, what do you notice immediately? Nuclear power, American base with a hostile foreign enemy who's hated them for centuries or multiple millennia. And country right here, Taiwan, that is pathologically opposed to China, and Philippines down here also pathologically opposed to China. And this is their major problem, is that they got nuclear powers to their north and their south, because down here is India, and you've got one country, this whole archipelago here, which is the first island chain. That's what the Chinese call it. They call it the first island chain. Is full of nations that are pathologically opposed to China. So what do we call this ground? This is hemmed in. Remember, I said that earlier. Hemmed in ground is the basically this is the ground. One sec, let me get the exact definition one more time.
Ground which is reached through narrow gorges, and from which we can only retire by tortuous paths, so that a small number of the enemy would suffice to crush a large body of our men. This is hemmed in ground.
Correct. So what you have right here, basically, if you have most of your population living up here in the north, and your industrial bases are right here in Shanghai and up here in Beijing and Tianjin, basically these are going to your trade has to go out through the Yellow River or the Yangtze or the Yangtze down south, and and immediately you hit countries that are pathologically opposed to you. Right. So if you want to trade with the rest of the world, you have to go past there's basically a narrow pass right here between Taiwan and Japan, or between Taiwan and the Philippines.
Right.
And so this is why it's like they can't integrate with the rest of the world, because if they want to send their trade ships out, they have to pass by their enemies. And think of these islands as unsinkable aircraft carriers. That's what that is. And this is and so this is why you put all of this together. For 6,000 years, China has been a unified country twice. Once was under Genghis Khan, and the other was right now under the American-led order, where America put a gun to everybody's head and said, "Hey, you're all on the same team now, or else we're going to fucking shoot your ass and nuke your capital city." And we're also going to patrol the oceans of the world with our navy and make it safe for everybody, even our enemies like China. So and because of that, China's been able to unite itself. So if America really wants to defeat China, all we have to do is end the global order and take our ships and go home. We can manage that. If we really want to defeat China, we don't have to go to war with them. We just have to pull our navy back, and geography is going to take care of the rest.
Right. Which would be the smartest and fastest way, potentially.
Best case scenario, yeah.
Right.
But internally, their geography is completely broken up. This is why they spend 2-to-1 on internal security versus military security. China spends twice as much on internal security because look at all of the internal barriers they have to China unity. You have you have mountains, Himalayas, Gobi Desert, Takla Desert. You have mountains here, mountains there, impassable foothills, rainforests. This is like the worst of the worst situation. And like China's basically it's you had like I talked about that. And virtually all of is accessible land, except right up here. This entire flat plain is all accessible land, so nothing's really breaking it up. So what you get with China's throughout its 5,000 years of history, because think about it, you have a small king with a poor army, and they have to march the army. They don't have like tanks or anything, or personnel troop carriers or anything, or roads, and you have to physically march your army everywhere. So for 5,000 years of Chinese history, it's one long story of whack-a-mole, genocide edition. Because like by the time
brilliant way to put it.
Yeah, it's like by the time you get to one far end of the empire, you have rebellions in another one. So you got to march your army back, genocide those people, and then there's another army. It's like, okay, the army is like it's not physically present right here anymore on the other side of the empire, and so we're just going to rebel again. Remember, secessionists down south, industrialists in the center, militarists up north. And the way it used to be is that China, its government would be whoever the head chairman of the CCP is. It would alternate between a Shanghai guy and a Beijing guy, and then until because they wanted to have alternating periods of Chinese industrialist power. This is when when the Shanghai guys are in charge of the CCP. That's when things are usually a lot more nice and peaceful. When the Beijing guys are in charge, by the way, Xi Jinping is a Beijing guy, and they're a lot more militaristic. And until we got to last time where you had Xi Jinping, normally they always nominate their successor from the other guy's camp. Turns out that Xi Jinping has a twin brother from Shanghai, also named Xi Jinping, whom he nominated to be his successor. So,
that's pretty.
Yeah, and so basically, this is China has really, really terrible internal geography for keeping itself together, and this doesn't look good. This already doesn't look good for them. And this is this here is kind of another geographical map, and where again you have militarists in the center. You have in the north you have militarists from like thousands of years of unending civil war and conquest, and in the south, because their geography is so very well protected, these are and you can't march an army across it because your army is going to get like bit by God only knows what and die some horrible death of whatever some tropical awful disease. and your whole army is going to be dead by the time you get to the battle and where they're going to be killed. And so this is why you get secessionists in the South. This is why it's so difficult for the CCP to keep China unified. This is where you're getting all of the riots, because it's tough to project power even over their own, internal country in their mainland. Never mind, going out to Taiwan or Japan or trying to integrate with the rest of the world. So, and here we get to the first, a view of the first island chain. And this here is the oil trade routes where they, because remember, China has virtually no natural resources. And they have to get all of their oil from the Persian Gulf, which is conveniently located like 6,000 miles away. So, and across multiple mountain ranges that they can't integrate through. And by the way, this one pass, they have precisely one pass where they can build a pipeline through, and it goes through Pakistan. And if there's ever a problem that India has, with China, it'd be very, very simple for them to blow up that one pass, and it will never ever be rebuilt. That one pipeline that they could possibly build, they haven't built it yet, but there's their only hope for getting oil from the Persian Gulf through Pakistan to China. This is their one and only hope. And if they piss off the Indians too much, the Indians can just, hey, Al Qaeda, we think there's a good bomb to go off right there in that gorge, and it's all done. And, and then it's like, you're never going to get, excuse me, you're never going to rebuild after that. So basically you have, your other option is to go by sea past all of these countries that hate China. You got Japan, you got Taiwan, you got the Philippines, you got Malaysia and Indonesia, and Vietnam, and Burma and India, who really, 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 all of them hate China. And then they get to sail their ships all the way to the Persian Gulf and have all the fun in the Middle East that we had. So it's just like you get to take it, then you get to pick sides in a 5,000-year-old blood feud that's devolved into a knife fight. Right. It's
like walking through a minefield blindfolded.
Pretty much. And so remember what I said earlier. China's Navy, they don't have that capacity to sail 6,000 miles away from the homeland. They can't do that. And they can't sail there because they can't secure their own oil trade routes. Yeah. So when America by the way, if there's ever a war with Taiwan, it's really easy for America to just say, we're cutting your oil, and basically, and now try fighting a war with no oil. And so basically, right now, this is what they're freaking out about, is that they have no energy security. And It's really, really, by the way, Japan, they do have a blue water navy. They can go right here and just cut China's oil supply lines. Remember, you have to guard your supply lines. China can't do that. Part of the, being supplied for war is having energy access. And they can't do that. So what they've been trying to do to, get around that is make the string of pearls, which is all these militarized bases, in the South China Sea and beyond, where they have one naval base after another, and it's not working out well for them because, when you make these Belt and Road initiatives, these loans to countries that have no possibility of paying them back, and then basically the loan defaults, and then you confiscate the land and turn it into a naval base. Well, it turns out that countries don't like that very much. They don't like having an enemy's navy base right on their front doorstep, and they'd rather just take it from you because they can. And so that strategy has not worked out well for China, except for one location up here near the Persian Gulf, where because of Somali pirates, everyone's allowed to build a navy base there. And including Americans, including the Europeans, including the Indians, and everybody else. Everybody has a navy base. I forget where it is. It's like right up here somewhere. I'm pointing on the map to this, kind of near Oman. And
the power structure is just everybody's basically the same.
Yeah. So everybody's there. So if you try militarizing that one, you're in trouble. You're allowed to militarize it to fight the Somali pirates and nobody else. You start using that, You got like one enemy after another right there ready to shoot you.
This is
So
like
don't
we
do it.
always talk about, if there's 100 people in a room and everyone's got a gun.
Yep, that's basically it. Yeah, this is it's a well-armed society is a very polite society. So don't mess with your don't mess. It'd be really suicidal for China to go to war right now. And but see, here's the problem: they have to. See, because all of their ground is hemmed in. If they don't take Taiwan, because remember, America's pulling its navy back right now. This is what we've already been doing. Is that we're tired of this is what the beauty and the glory of Donald Trump is. America is tired of being policemen of the world, and we're going home. And we've been pulling our troops back everywhere. We've been pulling our navy back everywhere. And this is why you're seeing the resurgence of countries like Turkey and France and Japan, who are now rebuilding all of their navies in anticipation of America's pullback. Mm-hmm. And now you have to have all of the other countries of the world rebuilding themselves into empires, which is something we had outlawed for, like 80 years now. Mm-hmm. And so now China's freaking out about this because they don't have access to the rest of the world. They have to, if they don't take Taiwan, they can't send their trade ships past to the rest of the world. Can't happen because you have, either Philippines right there that's going to take them, that's going to just confiscate their shit. By the way, we've seen this happen already in Iran multiple times, where Iran will see like an oil ship going out and they'll just take it. They have, their military will say, go take that oil ship. And you know what? That's, very, very valuable liquid that's highly combustible. And, we'd rather have it to sell it ourselves and they'll just take it. They'll confiscate it. And by the way, all of these hostile neighbors who really hate China are the ones they have to, sail their oil ships past in order to get it all the way up here, up into the Pearl River Delta, kind of right up in here, where they can fuel China. And, so they have to sail, some very, very valuable cargo past all of their enemies who've hated them for like multiple millennia. And this isn't looking good for them. And they're going to, like, if they start a war, it'll be like weeks before the lights go out because, either Japan or America will immediately cut their oil access, in protest to say, all right, no more oil for China. And, all of their enemies are just going to take whatever oil ships are already en route. Like they're gone. Their navies are going to just take them and confiscate them for whatever reason and say, tough. That's the way the world works. And
there's actually a comment that Joshua put on here that I wanted to see what you thought about it.
Go ahead.
It kind of goes in with that. He says, as the American empire degrades, our wealth is inflated away, and secessionist groups rise in the American interior. The American Navy will begin to retreat from global concerns, and China will spread.
No, China can't spread outward. That's the problem. Is that like right now, but this is hemmed in ground. There's nowhere to expand to. Remember the let's go right back here to the terrain map. You have basically deserts and highlands and rainforests, no deserts in the south, but you have high mountain ranges in the south. So they can't expand to the south. Ditto in the west, high mountain ranges and deserts, they can't expand there. Mountain ranges and deserts in the north, they can't expand there. And nuclear powers on the in kind of the northeast. So you can't expand to North Korea, they have nukes. You can't expand to Mongolia, they have nukes. You can't expand to Russia, they have nukes. And there's also mountain ranges up here in the north that would also block them there, and a desert in the north, the Gobi Desert in the north, would block them there. Yeah. So it's like there's really nowhere for them to expand. And then you have this first island chain archipelago on the outside of countries who all hate them and have hated them for centuries. And so there's nowhere for China to expand to. Yeah. And and their navy just can't go out that far. They don't have you've probably seen the mainstream media repeating this claim a lot that China has the largest navy in the world, and what they mean by that is the most boats. And The most number of boats does not win you a war. Firepower and your admirals do. And China has no admirals with any combat experience. Now, like the last time the Chinese Navy was deployed was in 1895 against Japan, and their whole fleet got sunk. So that's that was the last time. They have no admirals.
It wasn't April or October.
Huh?
I said I take it wasn't April or October.
Yeah, pretty much. And the didn't work out well for them. And so and also I'll get that on the next slide. Basically, so they're 48 ships. These are all designed for taking Taiwan. It's like they're not designed for long range combat. Like for this slide we have back here of the first island chain and securing oil.
Mm-hmm.
They're not designed for that. They can't sail this far, this convenient 6,000 miles away to the Persian Gulf and project power here against Saudi Arabia and Iran, who want to shoot at each other desperately and have wanted to shoot at each other like for decades. And this isn't working out well for them so far. And and again, they have to this Navy that the moment they invade, Taiwan's going to see them coming. They're just going to throw harpoons at everything.
Yeah.
And by the way, Japan is also, they know this about this first island chain, how this is hemmed in ground for China. And they've already, their foreign minister of Japan came out like a few months ago and said that it is imperative that if China tries to invade Taiwan, that Japan use its navy, which is like 25 times the firepower of China's navy, to defend Taiwan. Because if Japan sinks all of China's ships, China's locked in there for another century, and we're about to see why. Because remember, China already has a tough enough time keeping it together at home because their geography is so bad, and this is why they spend twice as much on internal security as they do on external military stuff, and they all have and this is kind of where we're getting to be a problem because they're assuming that they can somehow manage to magically keep all of the electricity on. They have a problem of demography. See, they had a baby bust 30 years ago. See, that's what happens when you have a one-child policy. Is 30 years later you're running out of 30-year-olds. Because that's how math works.
They used to talk about this a lot. Exactly that. Like when. Right now, it seems like a good idea, but as time goes on, it's going to be worse and worse for them because they're just not going to have the population that they need to do what they were trying to do.
Oh yeah, and basically, but because of this, like the last time that basically they have the same problem. Remember how we said that it's your admirals and your firepower that wins you the election. That wins you not the election. Well, same difference. That wins you the war because elections are war. Democracy is war by different means. Sometimes mostly peaceful, sometimes not. This problem of when you have one child, and basically the way the one child policy worked was because China is such a patriarchal community, is that society, I should say, that if you had a baby girl first, you were allowed to try for two, and if you got a girl a second time, tough luck. And so you were allowed to have two if you had a baby girl first. You had a baby boy first, stop. That's it, no more. And so because they had such a high favorability for boys, over girls, that had female infanticide was a major thing.
Right.
And but worse, we don't really send women to war, so we're going to ignore that for. Oh, by the way, I should talk about that. So when you have right now they have an excess of 40 million young boys versus girls who are in their 20s and 30s. So military age fighting men who have not had sex. Calm them down. And by the way, that there's, they don't have a great, they probably don't have jobs. Most of, if you're by the way, okay. So when China industrialized, what they found out pretty quickly is that when you start moving your population in from the rural areas of the interior into the more urban areas on the coastline, what happens is that when you can, when you're a corporation and you want laborers, what you do is, and you're trying to get them off the farmland, what you realize pretty quickly is that you can put 10 women into a 300 square foot apartment and they're not going to kill each other. You try that with 10 men, there's going to be like a severed head in the fridge by the end of the month. It's like, it's not going to work out for you.
I don't know, man. I got 4 sisters, and I guarantee you, if you put them in that situation, one of them's not coming out alive.
Yeah, you already got enough trouble. But
Yeah.
by the way, you have 40 million excess men versus women to start with.
Yeah.
But because you can pull a whole lot more women out of the rural areas than men, you also have an extra concentration of rural men. Where there are even fewer women where they are. So the male-female divide is even worse. It's exacerbated by geography because of the industrialization. And so you're looking at like okay, in America, our worst state is I forget which one it is. I think it might be Wyoming. And there's about 100 for every 100 women, there's 107 men. That's like our worst state. And their best is like their best province in China is like 107. So their best state is our worst. Their worst state is like 150 to 100. So there's like 50% more men than women. And again, these are all rural fighting age men. What could go wrong? And by the way, they haven't had sex, and because this is a rural area, they don't have jobs to get up for in the morning. Like, this is exactly the sort of mindset where these young men, they don't have work to get up for in the morning, so they start taking long walks. And this is how regimes get toppled. The CCP would know this is how they got their jobs. And so this is why they're spending so much on internal security, because you have a bunch of young military-age men who haven't had sex, and it kind of gets to them. They don't have a job and no future because this is a rural area. They don't have educations, and this is why they spend twice as much on internal security as they do on external security. They need their military, and they send their military off to die against a war. In a war, well, that military can't be at home to protect them. and it's even worse than that. Because in China, they don't have an old person, like welfare system. They have kind of a pension system, but not really. Okay. And the issue with what they usually do is like nature's welfare system. Where you raise your kids, you really love them, and in your old age, when you can't work anymore, your children will pay for you, and they'll kind of take care of you. Mm-hmm. Now, when you have one child, one boy. And now you want to take that one boy who is their retirement program. Understand that your children are your retirement program. So now you want to take the one boy of all of these people, and you want to take their retirement plan and send it to be shot at by the Japanese and the Americans.
That's not going to work out.
You're going to get a riot.
Yeah.
And like, you're seeing the way this is shaping up right now. By the way, all of these army vets, there are no vets in China. The last time that the CCP's army was their last deployment was in 1989 to Tiananmen Square to shoot at like unarmed academics. Like, this is like, they have no fighting and combat experience at all, and you want to take them and send them up, put them up against like the Americans. Yeah, this isn't looking good for you, China. This is a really, really bad idea. And so basically that because of this baby bust, their birth rate. Remember, 2.1 is replacement levels. Their birth rate is 1.18, according to the experts. It's like their birth rate has plummeted because remember, they're only allowed to have one. You normalize that, and basically the like their Hubei province. Remember we said that there's an even worse like their best province, which is like Xinjiang or what was it, Tibet? I think it's Tibet. Is like 107, and like our worst is like 107 to 100, and like even in their capital, this is by the way, these are official Chinese statistics. and anything you know, and the first thing you need to understand about official Chinese statistics, they're always designed to make China look better than it really is.
Yeah.
So the real ones are probably much worse. So in even Beijing, their capital, is that they have like 122 men for every 100 women. This is again, when men don't have sex, they go crazy, and if they don't have a job, they go crazy. And this is not good for, this is really, really not good for China. And so, and by the way, let's talk about their economics, because now we have to talk about force. In Archotropism, remember, it's force divided by distance and time. We've already established that distance and time are not the friends of China, of the CCP. Like, this is getting worse and worse and worse for them. And when we started to talk about their boats and their army, and we've established that their demography is fucking terminal and terrible. And now let's talk about their economy, because this is like, oh, this is going to overtake us. No, it's not. It's like, here is all of the the cred. This is the total debt of all these societies. In blue here at the bottom, we have the United States. This little bump right here in the middle, this is what caused the Great Recession. This is total credit. This is everything except interbank lending. This is this is your mortgages. This is credit cards. This is all private loans. This is everything except interbank lending. So if you're a bank lending to another bank, we're not counting that. And this little bump right here, this is this is what caused 2008 right here. And you see how small that is compared to in green, we have Europe. They printed 3 times as much capital, and their recession has been longer and harder and much worse. In this dotted red line here, we have Greece. They printed like 7 times as much capital, and their depression right now is far more severe than what we went through in the 1930s. And let's see, Brazil is here in yellow, and they do have good demography, but they have awful geography. And you can see this. Remember this little blue bump here. This is 2008. You can see how much worse this is. This is for all of these other countries. And by the way, I'm not big on Brazil politics. This is, by the way, they're looking at a lost decade right here. This assumes they get the politics correct, which is not looking good for them, because I won't get into that. But India, you see, India and Turkey are funny characters because they both have elected ethno-nationalists who don't think anything of spawning a race riot so they can get a bump in the polls. And they have, both of them have yet to be. Actually, India has yet to begin its correction. This right here, this little hook, is when Turkey decided that they were going to be. Oh, I need to remove my. Oh, there you go. There we go. Okay, yeah. This is when this hook right here is when Turkey began its monetary correction with the lira. And what they did at the same time was they invaded their neighbor. It's a distraction play. That was when they invaded Syria, back in 2019, I think. And so unfortunately, the here's the chart of the People's Republic of China. It did not fit on the first chart, so we had to move it up quite a little bit. Remember, over here, let's go right back. This blue line right here, this little bump, this is 2008. This is the People's Republic of China. Oh my God, are they screwed? This little hook right here, this is what they call a tightening. Just a little bit. And we can see this again in the global monetary supplies. Again, here right here in the center, you can see that right here, this little bump. These are M2s. This is the total money supply for 4 different countries. One is the United States, then the Eurozone, then the Japanese, and then the Chinese. And here you have QE1, QE2 and QE3, and these are kind of small bumps. Over here, you have the this little bump right here, where it starts to tick up. This is what we're calling trans QE, because it is QE, but it doesn't identify as that. This is what happened in 2019, where you had a infinite QE that doesn't bank repurchase or repo madness or something like that. It does not. It's a QE, but it doesn't identify as QE. So we're calling it trans QE. And then this big hook over here, this is what experts call transitory. It's COVID, yeah. This is all the COVID printing, and transitory. Unfortunately, it's not going to be transitory. So we're screwed. And you have over here, you have the Eurozone. By the way, right now Europe is about 15% of global trade. Keep in mind that with all the money that we print, we're a global currency. All debt, all the economics, all the economic transactions, or at least I think it's 70%, 60 or 70% of economic transactions globally are in dollars. So we have to print dollars for the rest of the world, not just our own economy. And Europe is only about 15%. And you can see their chart here in gray. They're basically right in line with us, if not more, if not higher than us. And they're 15% of global transactions. And the Japanese yen is 1.5% of global reserves. They're not much, and they're puny, and here they are right along with us. And then there's the People's Republic of China. And less than 1% of, and basically in the average month, China prints about 5 times the amount of currency that the Federal Reserve does. And the Chinese yen, the renminbi is not a reserve currency, and it's not used anywhere outside of China. And the only places internationally that it is used is Hong Kong. It's that's not really international trade. It counts, technically it counts, but not really. We all know what that is. And so when you see that this is what's coming, this map here is the economic concentrations. This is how much debt that their indebted sectors. These are all the provinces of China and their relative debt rates. So in blue down here, we have, everyone thinks of China as an export economy, but it's really not. It's really just this one Guangdong province right there. That's it. And, in blue, we have exports are greater than private consumption and investments put together. So there's one. And Beijing, technically, that one probably should be blue too, but because it's the capital. But, you never think of Washington, D.C. as, being export driven. Right. They don't build anything there. They just consume everything. And that's what that is. This one, we have it marked as yellow, but probably should be green or blue. But, in green, we have, by the way, Shanghai, that's also export driven. So remember, we said all of their industrial base is basically right around the Yellow River. Mm-hmm. Or I'm sorry, the Yangtze. The Yangtze is a southern river. And so, and this is the Pearl River Delta right down here. So that's also blue. That's also I'm not a tributary. I forget what the opposite of a tributary is, but that's it flows out from the Yangtze down. So you have yellow and green and blue kind of in the industrial base, and then the rest of it, and this is where green is where your your economic growth comes from. Either investments in private it's either investments and private consumption and exports. It's not debt. Whereas, by the way, when I say investments, I mean debt. That's what that is. It's the People's Republic making debt-based investments, in China. Because what you do if you're China and you have this shitty internal geography, there are two things. There's two things you do. One is you beat anybody who has you beat the daylights out of anybody who has an independent thought. So that's the number one first thing you do. Second thing you do is you make sure they have a job in the morning to get up to. Because if you have a job that you have to get up for in the morning, you're not thinking about going and starting a riot or a revolution.
Causing some trouble.
Yeah. And so basically, you will throw like mountains of money at whatever you like. There is no amount of money that you can't they won't print to try to keep this economic engine thing going, so that they can all of their people don't wake up and want to riot and have a revolution.
Yeah.
And so that's what all you have here in orange is you have their debt-based investments are greater than their private consumption and exports combined, and in red it's combined and doubled. And so
those are all less populated areas, right? Does that matter?
yeah. Well, basically, yes, because these are all these are rural areas. Because remember that this is where you have all of the those young, finding age military men who haven't had sex. This is where they all live, and so when there's a real pullback in Chinese economy, not only basically you're going to have all of these military men who don't have a job to get up for in the morning, and that's why they need their army right here rather than right there. It's like if they send their army away, oh boy, this is not going to be good for them, because all of these young men could easily just get up and riot and have a full-blown revolution, and there's 40 million of them. China's army is 2 million. And it's, again, like that means like that's those are numbers that work for them, but not if the army is like trying to invade Taiwan, and not if the people are so pissed that you sent their retirement policy to be shot at by the Japanese and the Americans and the Taiwanese. Boy, that's not looking good for you. And so the basically, oh, by the way, their most indebted sector of the economy is farming. So when the the economic correction comes, by the way, let me go back 2 slides. This is what Enron looks like in nation state form. This is the Enron strategy of growth. And when that all comes apart, not only are they going to have a revolution, they're going to have a famine too. Because when the economy crumbles, their most indebted sector is farming, because it takes 5 times the amount of inputs to grow stuff in China, because you have to have all of that fertilizer and all of that pesticides to kill shit. Because God, remember, their farmland is like kind of down here and down here. That's that's a subtropical zone where where there's no winter kill. See, the benefit of having winter and snow is that when when snow comes down, it's a free bug kill and fungus kill. And and you also gives the soil some time to regenerate.
Yeah.
And it's a free, and it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. If you're in a subtropical area, that does not exist. And so you have to spend a lot more in, pesticides and fungicides and herbicides and all that to grow stuff. It's way more costly.
Yeah.
And so that's why their most indebted sector is farming. And boy, when all those loans go bad, that's not looking good for them, because you have a bunch of young, angry farmers who haven't had sex and who want to go on a long march, so to speak. And this, and this is the country you want, and now you want to go to war. This isn't looking good for you. And basically, they need Taiwan, but they can't take it. So what? Now, what do? You try to get leverage. So that's just why they're trying to expand into like the South China Sea to build bases down here in the Paracel Islands, in the Pratas Islands, in the Scarborough Shoal, and in the Spratly Islands. This is this is their way of trying to militarize their zones so they can continue this trade. And there is they think that there's oil down here, kind of near the in the near the Philippines. And the problem with that is Japan can just come and take it. And if there is oil there and they try to drill for it, because they remember, there's no way they're going to be able to get over to the Persian Gulf, and that's just not going to happen. It's not going to be a thing. And so their idea is, okay, we're going to militarize these small little coral reefs and everything and turn them into basically unsinkable aircraft carriers. And Yeah, and there's enough there that they could probably menace Taiwan and all these other places, but they're not going to be able to take it like that. And so what they have to get leverage for a trade deal. There's got, by the way, trade deals are really kind of covert peace deals. That's a way of saying, all right, we're going to have peace with you. And, by the way, never make a deal with China because they never keep their word. But, if they're going to have to try to declare peace somehow, because there's no way they're going to be able to take Taiwan, not with the Japanese declaring that they'll defend Taiwan, not with the Americans, because basically it's real easy for the Japanese or the Americans to just sail their fleet to right behind here on Taiwan and then run air raids over the Strait of Taiwan. Because as China tries to come across, Taiwan's going to be shooting everything that moves in the water, and Japan and America could easily just do air raids from safely right behind Taiwan. China can't get them. China can't shoot them, and we can get them. And it's not going to work out for China. So military option is basically off the table. They have to create leverage, and that's what they're doing here with these island militarization. By the way, the seafloor is sinking at about like 2 feet, and the last time there was a major earthquake, because this is all a volcanic zone right up in here. This is all tectonic plates, the Pacific plates moving up against the Philippines plate. Mm-hmm. And the last time there was a major earthquake in 2013, remember we had that tsunami that hit Japan. And what happened at that time was that this whole area sank by about 2 feet. Slowly, but this is what happened. So, when your aircraft carrier is only like a foot or two above sea level at high tide, this ain't looking good for you. You get 1 or 2 more bad hurricanes or some, quicker than normal climate change, hopefully, and all your aircraft carriers are going to sink, and that's bad for you. And suppose so much for an unsinkable aircraft carrier. And by the way, they're also very vulnerable to tsunamis and other shit like that. And not to mention hurricanes, which hurricane season's coming. We're there right now. So this is why they can't invade right now, is that there could be a typhoon at any time, and they don't want to risk that when they have an invasion. So that they have basically, again, April and October are the only times that are the only months of the year where the Strait of Taiwan is calm enough to support a naval invasion, and there's also no typhoons coming, that are going to be coming. Mm-hmm. So, and they need leverage, but they can't take it. And remember that America is also, we're still the hegemon for right now. We didn't give them permission to be, hegemon. So they're going to need to occupy the hegemon somehow in their own backyard. See, this is the Strait of Cuba right here. There are 2 straits right here where this is what the Soviets kind of figured out, is that all of our 5 largest ports, 4 of them are in the Gulf. Mm-hmm. So this is like New Orleans, it's like Tampa, Houston, and one other I can't remember, but Miami. There we go. And basically all remember what we said about hemmed in ground? Right now, America's kind of hemmed in, except for the global hegemon, and we rule the seas with our 10 battle groups, any one of which has the firepower of the rest of the navies of the world combined, most of which are allies. So what the Soviets figured out was, well, if we put some missiles right here, we can freak the Americans out, because the Americans won't be able to get their trade out right here and right here. Remember, most of our trade comes down the Mississippi River, and goes out, because again, it's 98% cheaper to float economic goods from point A to point B by water, than it is by driving them, and never mind rail or anything, or air, which are both way more expensive. And so, if they can just block our trade by putting military assets on Cuba, then we will freak the fuck out. And this is what happened with the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is what that was about. And so when you are China, and you have Cuba, and you have Huawei, which is responsible for all of China's internet access, what you can do is you can freak the hegemon out by occupying them in their own backyard by using your Huawei technology to help spawn some liberty riots in Cuba. This is what that's about. Because it's not and of course America responds immediately. We're freaked out about having our trade potentially threatened, and this is not America going in with our CIA and trying to stir up trouble in Cuba, because why would we? We're usually in charge, and they know who's the boss. And but if you're China and you want to freak the Americans out, start having a revolution in Cuba. And also, by the way, like Nicaragua, El Salvador, Mexico, et cetera, all of these countries that are all having, revolutions right now, or not revolutions, but a lot of civil unrest driven by social media. That's not the Americans. That's China, using their Huawei to try to organize all these people into, having situations where, the hegemon is occupied on their backyard. Again, this is so that they can create leverage, because they need this trade deal right here if they're going to have access to the wider world in the decades to come. Because their military option is basically off the table. It's not going to work out for them. They're already they don't have the force required, and Taiwan, Japan, and United States together, they don't have the force to take. They can't take Taiwan by force. They don't have the force. They can't go the distance, as we've seen with the String of Pearls map. And right here, they can't go the distance because all of these countries are pathologically opposed to them, and they can't integrate with the wider world. They've only been able to do it twice in Chinese history. Again, once was under Genghis Khan, and the other is now under the American-led order. And their geography is split up really, really badly, to where you have your militarists in the north, and in the Yellow River plain, because that floodplain is very, very wonderful for growing rice. That's where the population of China basically began. Your industrialists are kind of in the center, and your secessionists are in the south. It's like they're having enough internal problems right now with their own geography, never mind everybody else's geography. And and in a world where America is no longer the police, they're fucked. And they have to take Taiwan, in order to be able to continue their trade with the rest of the world, and they can't do that. And their Belt and Road Initiative, it's not quick enough. Sorry, they're out of time, and that's not enough for them anymore.
Yeah.
So right now, they're trying to create leverage so they can create a trade deal. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think we're going to see a war with China. If they do, they're going to get their asses kicked, and this is not going to work out well for them. Because again, you want to send your military is full of admirals and army vets who have no combat experience, and there is no institutional memory of combat experience among them, and you're going to be fighting against the world's best killers in the United States and Japan, who both have a long history of killing the Chinese. Oh, okay, well, not America, but Japan has a long history of killing the Chinese people, and so it's like there's that fear there, and they need a trade deal. They have to create leverage. This is what Cuba has been about recently. And so let's look at the conclusions. Their internal geography is a security nightmare, making consolidating power very difficult. Its mixed geography offers them little in protection from the outside world, because again, their shoreline is all flat plains, all completely wide open for invasion. And their hemmed in oceanic geography makes trade with the outside world very risky. Except for when the Americans put a nuke to everyone's head and say, hey, you're all on the same team now. And by the way, we're done with that. It's not in our, Donald Trump ended that because he cut all the trade deals.
Right.
No, we don't, these 6 trade deals we have, these are the only ones we care about anymore. And actually, no, I think it's 5. I think it's 5, not 6. And these are the only ones we care about anymore. And if we really want to defeat China, we just have to take our military and go home. Geography is going to take care of the rest. And their trade routes are in dire straits. That's a joke, because straits, and they don't have the naval power to secure their oil 6,000 miles away, and maintaining oil access for electricity is going to be a long-term geostrategic challenge for them. Even if they manage to start extracting oil in the South China Sea, they risk Japan, who has a 25 times more military power than China does, just taking it from them, straight up taking it. And we've already started to see that happen in the Persian Gulf, where Iran just straight up confiscates oil, and America kind of that's what that's about. Yeah, America doesn't give a shit about the oil trade coming out of Persia and Arabia anymore. And remember when the Houthi rebels, blew up that one oil refinery in Saudi Arabia, America yawned. We don't care. It's not our problem. And that sounds like a you problem, Arabia. That's I don't see why that's our problem. And Biden has done nothing but kind of reiterate this. We don't care. And this basically they have territorial disputes with all of their neighbors who hate them, and they can't get out. They can't expand anywhere. And basically, and not to mention, mustering force is also a problem for them. That their economy is, I mean, we saw the chart. This is not going to be, this is Enron in nation state form. This is bad. Their economy is in shambles from like 3 decades of monetary and fiscal mismanagement. And their demography is already terminal for 30 years after of the one-child policy, because with 30 years of one child, you're going to be running out of 30-year-olds, because that's how math works. And most of those one-son parents don't want their retirement policy to be sent to be shot at by the who's who list of world's most deadly navies. It's like that, and if you try, they're going to riot. They're going to get pissed. And so, and they already have this problem at home where they have to quell all of the unrest from the economic troubles, from just ethnic disputes, and and a whole bunch of young men who haven't had sex, because that's what usually calms men down a little bit. And if they can't get that, oh boy. By the way, the dowries they're having to pay in China, it's like that you have to buy a house. Because remember, they have dowry systems. If you're a man, you have to pay a dowry to get married. Mm-hmm. And basically, you, the man, have to pay the dowry to the woman, not the other way around. In Europe, it's the other way. It used to be the other way around. But in China, it's not so. And so the dowries, you're now talking literally lifetimes worth of money to pay a dowry. You're for the on average, basically the average dowry is like close to like 100,000 yuan. Or I'm sorry, not yuan, $100,000. Think of having to pay $100,000 to your wife's family to get married. Because think about it, like supply and demand. Supply and demand are a bitch. Like, you as a man have to compete against 40 million extra men. Like, you better be a spectacular. And so what they're having to do now in China is they're having to, like, parents have to like mortgage their house to pay for their son's dowry. Like, that's the trouble that they're in right now. And so you have all of that unrest going on at home. You can't afford to have an invasion right now, and you're a fool if you do. And basically, if they don't get a peace deal, really a trade deal with Taiwan, they're fucked. And their recent behaviors about trying to menace people here, other countries here and there, and what we've also seen in Cuba, this is them trying to create leverage for that trade deal. And if they don't get it, China's century is over. And that's that's the sort of thing I look at when I'm considering the fourth law of archotropism. If you can't muster the force and send it over the distance, and preferably not taking your time, because again, like Sun Tzu says, there is no example of a country that has benefited from prolonged warfare, because that's all a cost. Distance and time are costs to force. And if you can't go the distance, you don't have power. And China doesn't have the power. They are not a threat to us. We should, the American military, we should not be preemptively going to war with them, because we don't have to. All we have to do is take our Navy and go home. Geography will take care of the rest. And that's The Art of War, Libertarian edition.
Yes, sir. Man, that was some good stuff today.
Anyone in the comments? What do y'all think?
Yeah, Joshua's been
Joshua's been tearing it up.
Yeah, he has. He has some pretty good questions, but I didn't want to kind of put you off.
No, that's all right. Yeah, he talked about
you kind of answered them as I don't know if you were looking at them and then
yeah,
or if you were just
But yeah, these are the natural considerations, like the power vacuum that's going to be left behind by America leaving. That's probably going to be filled by Japan in the South Pacific. That's historically they were the empire, and that's probably what that's going to be. And the idea that they're going to have like robot troops or anything, not yet. Again, it's like you can have drones, but they can't fly. They can't fly that far. This is you're not going to be able to fly those drones across the South China Sea. It's like they don't have that kind of range. And
given all this stuff that you went over right now, what about like the electronic side of things?
Cyber warfare is something they can do, but you have to be able to follow that up with an army, boots on the ground. I mean, you can you deal destruction, but using cyber stuff all day long. But if you don't have boots on the ground to follow it up with, which they don't, because you can't send the boots across a ocean moat except by boat, and the boats can all be sunk. It's like, what good is that? You can't do much.
Long-term effects is what you're saying. Like any cyber attack that they were to be doing, it would be more of a hiccup to anyone that they did it against.
Yeah, they're more of a tactic than a strategy.
Right.
It's like it might help you to take down an electrical grid right before you're about to attack, but a military is going to have ways around that.
Yeah.
Like they're going to have their own electrical sources, and they'll be able to sustain themselves, and you might be able to hack their radar system, but that radar system might not be connected to any network anywhere. So, it's like, that cyber attacks are really just that, you don't know what you don't know, and they're not something you can rely on as a way of means of conquering another nation. So
who would be another question, I guess, because I didn't see anyone ask this, would be potential allies for China to kind of make this a little easier.
Well, they've managed to piss off basically all of their neighbors.
Right.
And the one ally they might have is Russia, who doesn't want anything to do with their war of conquering Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it. Their only other ally kind of is North Korea, who can base their own army is starving to death. Right. So it's like they can't do it. They have no allies. And all of their neighbors hate them and have hated them for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And they can't go to war. There's nowhere for them to expand to.
Or in Africa.
Huh?
What about any African kind of countries?
Too far away. It's like, how are you gonna get the boots on the ground from there to here?
Right. So that even goes even further into the even from an ally perspective, the fourth law of archotropism applies to
basically that this whole geography is a real bitch to exerting power. If you can't if you can't go the distance, you can't apply the force. And my opinion, a war with China is not in the cards. Maybe they're fools and they're going to get their asses kicked. And by the way, if their whole navy gets sunk, say bye-bye to the CCP. Yeah, like that kind of political embarrassment, they're not going to come back from that. And that's going to be taken as a sign of weakness by the Chinese people, and who greatly outnumber them. Again, there's like 80 million people in the Chinese Communist Party and 1.4 billion Chinese people. Or like really 1.6 right now, but I think they've downgraded it to 1.4 after COVID killed, I don't know how many people.
Yeah. Yeah, because they never said, like you said about their, when you get numbers from China, you can't trust them, right? They either look good. That's the whole purpose of them, is to make them look good. So it's probably a lot more than anyone knows. Yeah,
and like this kind of problem, like that war is not in the cards from their point of view. And there's more than enough, force on the other side between Taiwan, Japan, and the United States to deter any thought of action.
Yeah.
So their best chance is a trade deal.
And then obviously India wouldn't want anything. India wouldn't want to see them succeed.
India pathologically hates them.
Right.
India just banned 80 Chinese tech companies a few weeks ago because of in India there was some disputed territory where they have their militaries on either China and India have their militaries on either side, except there are no guns. But China thought it'd be a great idea to spark a fight with two mobs of men, and China had clubs with like baseball bats and nails on them, and they killed like 20 Indian soldiers, and India retaliated against them by banning their 80 something Chinese tech firms, including Huawei and Tencent and all of the other and TikTok and all these other big Chinese companies that were bringing them revenue in. And so they lost billions and billions of dollars over 20 dead bodies. Yeah. And by the way, India is also a nuclear armed superpower. So, right. And again, if they piss off India again, remember that one gorge in Pakistan, India does have the kind of social pull there with the networks of like Al Qaeda to say, we need you to go. Yeah. They also have that relationship with Saudi Arabia to say, hey, we need your Al Qaeda guys, your political agents, your political ambassadors to go take out that gorge. And that's the only one. And if they blow it up, there's no more oil coming in through Pakistan ever again. So they're screwed. So the number one problem with China, they're completely screwed militarily. And
which is good for the rest of us, I guess, isn't it?
It's good while it lasted for them, I guess, but it's over now. Now that you had 30 years of one-child policy, your demographics are in like free fall, and you're basically they're no longer the low-cost competitor anymore anywhere. They're I don't have the chart for this, but their wages. Remember, we're used to thinking of China as you can get mountains of goods for ultra cheap. Mm-hmm. Their wages have gone up like 7-fold, and their productivity has only doubled since 2000. Right. So since 2000, you're up 7-fold, and your productivity is only up 2-fold. That does not put you in line with all the other countries. Like Mexico, has about the same level of productivity for half the price. That's why Mexico's the next kind of regional superpower. Oh, and Mexico doesn't have the terminal demography. Like they have people that you can sell to. So when you have China, you have all that excess production capacity and no consumer base. You have to export all of that excess capacity. Yeah. And and there's no possible way for us to have a trade surplus with them because they have just so few people. They have to export all of their excess. So there's no possible way we can have a trade surplus with them. And since we can't, there's not really any reason for us to be trading with them because all they can do is sell to us. We can't, we can only buy from them. We can't sell back to them. Our companies have nothing to gain from doing business with them. And they can also, and if they want low cost producers, they can just get that in Mexico, which is a lot closer. They don't have to cross the whole Pacific Ocean. Yeah. And it's over for China. They're screwed.
Sure seems like you sold me on that idea.
Yeah. And if there's a military effort, it's going to be one last gasp and it's going to get shot down, and they don't want that. So I think if a war starts, it's not going to be because China started it. Yeah. And it's like unless Xi Jinping is just such a fool, and I don't see it that way. Yeah. I don't think he's dumb enough to risk such a cataclysmic embarrassment to the party that's going to have him basically off with his head. So like right now they're preparing, like all the extra spying they're doing, this is preparing for a totalitarian lockdown. Like they're locking China down for the foreseeable future because they see famine on the horizon, economic unrest on the horizon, and and a military option is just off the table. And they're not going to be able to trade with the rest of the world unless they can somehow manage to get a trade deal with Taiwan. And that's going to come at and I don't see them doing that because then they're going to have to recognize Taiwan's nationhood. Yeah. I just don't see that happening. So it was nice while it lasted in China. But
Yep.
you know, the art of war is, you know,
This
this
is a
has been
good.
the art.
I think it was like $2.
Yeah,
Like
this is such a good book if you understand it. Like China's hemmed in.
yeah.
They're not going to be expanding. There's nothing for them to do about it. They're screwed. And so yeah, no war with China. That's the conclusion. All right, Yale. I think that's good.
Yes,
That's
sir.
about it. All right.
Thanks
Take
for
care,
having
y'all.
me again, dude. Appreciate it.